Today I have my friend Kaylee Bench. Kaylee is one of my coworkers from Chick-fil-A, which I haven't been in a very long time. And we are going to be talking about her conversion story to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we talked briefly about her experiences with the church before you joined and everything. And now, last February is what you said, right? Last February, she was baptized and she is now a member of the church. And she has a really interesting story, and I'm really excited to hear it. So, Kaylee, tell the world a little bit about yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Kaylee. I'm 18 years old right now. I'm at Snow College. Just doing my generals right now, trying to figure out my life. Yeah, not much about me.
Yeah, Kaylee's great, and we had a lot of fun conversations while we were working and stuff, and we got on some heavy topics too, and this was one of them. So we'll just kind of dive deep into it. So my first question for you is kind of tell us about like your upbringing and like beliefs growing up as like a kid with like the church, or did you have any religious beliefs as a church? Did you believe there was a God? Did you believe in God? Like, what was that like when, specifically, like when you were a kid, kind of growing up? Would you say?
I feel like as a kid, I wasn't around the church much, so I didn't really know much about religion. And growing up, didn't know much of anything about the church. I knew that my grandparents were a part of it, and it was a big thing in their lives. But both of my parents, they also grew up in the church, but they stopped when they got older. Um, so I never really got that experience. I knew as I grew up, I believed that there was something out there. I just didn't know what. And I think now that I'm older and able to believe what I want to and find myself, I've definitely grown that and found myself a little bit more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you kind of had an idea that there was something out there. Were there
Yeah.
any specific moments or experiences as a kid or in your younger years that kind of allowed those thoughts to kind of brew in your head a little bit more?
Um, I think I did have like my grandparents around me, so I knew like tiny bits about the church. And that I think got me thinking like, is there something out there? And I feel like there's so many beautiful blessings in this world. There's like no way there can't be, you
That's
know?
awesome. That's a beautiful way of looking at it. I mean, that's very true. I mean, we have this beautiful earth that we live on, and beautiful people that we get to meet and work with, and animals, for heaven's sake,
Yeah.
all sorts of random stuff on this earth that we've associated that's so normal these days are actually random and beautiful blessings that we've kind of had in store. So a big question I see like out on the internet is temples. So for example, the temples in like California, for example, we have I think there's maybe 7 or 8 temples in California. I'd probably say, I could be wrong on that. But there's one temple I've seen that's gone over social media too, actually. There's the San Diego temple, and then there's the Washington, D.C. temple. Both of them are really close to the freeways that they have going on over there. And people have compared them to like the Disney castles and stuff like that, or sort of all sorts of weird terms and such. So we have a lot of temples here in the Utah Valley, and you've obviously seen them before.
Mhm.
What was your view on like temples, and have you had the ability to go through a temple yet?
Um, yeah, so I mean, we live in Utah. There's a lot of temples.
Right. Yes.
And actually my grandparents, they live like right down the street from the South Jordan temple.
Jordan River
So,
Temple. Okay.
yeah, I've seen that a lot growing up. Cuz I'd go over to my grandparents about like every Sunday when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I always remember playing in their backyard and always seeing the temple and seeing like how beautiful it is. And I just never really knew what goes on in there, but I've always had like this strong like feeling about the temple. I didn't quite know what it was as a kid, but like even passing by it, like, it just kind of makes me happy. And I think about a month ago from now, I like went to the temple. I did baptisms
Awesome.
and it was amazing. Like honestly, it was everything that I like thought it would be in my head, and it was really amazing.
That's awesome because as human beings, we overthink a lot, you know? I mean, I overthink almost everything, you know?
Yeah.
And that's amazing that it was how you thought it would be, you
Mhm.
know? Because a lot of people have mixed feelings about what we do inside
Mhm.
the temple. I mean, everything that you do above that, like getting your endowments and initiatories and things, those are pretty sacred and everything. But we can kind of talk a little bit more publicly about um, the baptisms for the dead and such. But so that was your first time going inside, was like about a month ago, is what you
Yeah.
said.
Mhm.
Let's kind of touch on that a little bit, actually.
Mhm.
So, what was it? Were you nervous going inside? There's always, whenever I go through the temple, there's like this big swoosh feeling of like the spirit that comes over me. For me, I feel it like right up here in my chest, and it's like a breeze of air. I mean, a little
Mhm.
bit of air actually comes through because the doors are so weird in the Jordan River Temple I'm talking about specifically.
Mhm.
But what was it like when you walked in for the first time, knowing that you had a temple recommend and that you were worthy to go inside?
I feel like beforehand I was definitely very nervous. I
Okay.
was definitely overthinking it a lot because that's just kind of how I am. Um, but I went with my boyfriend Brian, and
Shout out to Brian.
shout out to Brian.
Love you, Brian.
Love you. Um, and we went together, and then I like kind of felt that feeling too, honestly. I mean, I was like really stressed out because it was actually raining the day we went, and it was like pouring. And then
Oh,
we were trying to find the right doors to go into the temple. And then I remember walking in, and it was just like, oh, kind of like that.
that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was really beautiful. I just remember looking at that temple and I was like, wow, it is such a beautiful place. And I'm like honored that I can be in here.
And just out of curiosity, what was the first temple you went into?
It was the Manti temple.
Oh, Manti. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't been. I want to go to that temple.
It's so pretty.
It's an old, beautiful temple.
Hmm.
So that's awesome because yeah, that's the closest one to snow, right?
Hmm.
Because the Ephraim one's not done yet. It should be
Not quite,
done
but
pretty soon. Because
it looks done. I don't know
yeah,
why it's not open yet, but
I was down there for FSY 2 years ago and I saw it, and during that point it was just the steel and such.
hmm.
So that's cool that that little town
Hmm.
that's just a college campus is getting a temple.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay. Um, so glad we got the touch on the temple and everything,
Hmm.
but what other kind of perspectives did you have growing up without like religion in your life? So like the Book of Mormon is kind of a scary book to some people because it kind of contradicts what like the Bible, you know. There's books in like Revelation that say like there'll be no other books besides like these two books, right? And that kind of stumps people. You know, I've watched some podcasts about that. Is the New Testament basically and kind of the Old Testament too says there's no more books. You know, can't be anything else. Anything else is false doctrine and everything. But what would you say to your testimony with the Book of Mormon? Like when did you start reading it for the first time? Do you have any chapters that stuck out to you when you first started reading it? Did you start in the beginning? Did you make your way in the middle? Like, what was that like for you with the Book of Mormon?
I think the very first time I started reading the Book of Mormon was actually when I was like around 8. Um, Growing up, my mom took me and my siblings to the LDS church a couple times. I remember that, but I wasn't 100% sure why, but um, I'm pretty sure we had missionaries come over and they gave us a Book of Mormon. And I started reading it. Of course, as a kid, I didn't understand it whatsoever. and then I kind of just put it away and didn't really think much of it. Um, and I think I kind of tried to avoid it because since I was like going to church with my mom and I was 8, I, I was considering getting baptized, even though I didn't really know what it was, but my mom was considering that. And we had talked to my dad about it, and he was very against it. And I remember my parents getting in a very big argument about it. My dad said that this is very stuck in my brain that I was going to go to hell if I got baptized.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that definitely turned me away from the church and scared me a lot because as a kid, hearing that from your dad, it's very scary. So ever since then, I think I just tried to stay away from it. Um, and then finally, when I left home, went to college, I kind of was able to discover what I actually wanted to do. And when I got down to snow, I met these 2 missionaries as I was walking to my first day of class.
Of course, that's the story, you know?
Yeah. And I was struggling the week before. I was like, I'm in college and I don't know what I'm doing right now. I feel so lost. And ran into these missionaries and they're like, hey, would you like this Book of Mormon that we have? And I'm like, absolutely. And then I started reading it after we had our first lesson with the missionaries. And I didn't start in the beginning. I think I started in, I think it was Second Nephi.
Okay. I like Second Nephi a little bit better than First Nephi.
Yeah. And I think then I finally like started to understand it a lot more. And I think I could apply it more to my life. And I think it was a good time to read it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So that's great. I mean, you met the missionaries, and you know they just spawned out of nowhere, as they do. You know, they show up in the most perfect moments for people, right? And you got to start with Second Nephi, and you just opened the book and you started reading. Did you kind of doubt opening up the book at first, or did you kind of just dive into it and go, I'm so ready to read this? Like, were you hesitant to open up the book? Because it's kind of a difficult thing, because you're opening yourself up to a new perspective of life, you know, and you're also opening up to the idea that this could change you. And that can be a little nerve-wracking, you know, at first. But what was that like when like you had the cover of the book in your hand and you flipped open to the first page? Just kind of get into like the nitty-gritty stuff of this.
It was very interesting. I like had the book and I was like, wow, this is like very like sacred. I mean, I didn't completely feel that at the time, but I knew that this book was special. And I remember I like put it in my backpack for a minute because I still had to go to my class. And then I got back home and I was like, should I read this? I don't know. I went into it though with an open mind, knowing that it might not completely be what I needed at that moment. But
Okay.
I started reading it and it helped a lot. It definitely fit into my life. And I was like, I relate to this a lot. Surprisingly, it's an old book.
Very old book. Yes, it is.
But yeah, I would say I was kind of hesitant, especially with like all of the stuff as a kid.
No, for
like,
sure. I mean, what your dad said, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like if you took your dad's advice, I mean, and if he was right, I mean, you'd be going to hell, you know. That's I mean, that's a very scary thing, because there's probably a little bit of PTSD, you know, like,
for sure.
I mean, you're young too at that age, so everything is a little bit new, and you take after the guidance of your parents, you know. And when they're saying stuff like that, I mean, it kind, you know, you look up to your parents, you know. I mean, most people do when you're at that age, and it's probably very difficult to have that feeling in your heart, but then someone who should love and care for you not supporting that, you know? So, but that's awesome that you got to find it now. You know, that's a great thing. And I think a lot of people are in that position right now where their family or their maybe even friends aren't really working with them on like decisions like this, you know? And I think your testimony to just, you know, opening up the book, you know, that's as simple as that. Stay curious. Opening up your mind is great advice to people who kind of are in that boat, or people who will be in that boat one day. You know, we don't stay in this spiritual form forever. Like we're gonna, you know, we're gonna hit the ground at some point, and then we gotta find a way to get back up. So, but that's awesome. So would you probably say this kind of goes along with my next question was what would be like the biggest, we'll kind of get into this question right now, but what was the turning point for you with the church? Like we've talked a little bit briefly about the temple, very, very, very briefly about the church, and then the scriptures. But what was the light bulb moment in your head where you were just like, oh my gosh, this is what I need? It could be the scriptures, kind of like what you said, but if you can get into the most specific detail, it could, I mean, even the words that were going through your head, what would that be? Just whatever you're comfortable sharing.
I would say my turning point would be around last year, January 2025. I was very lost, and it was honestly probably the lowest point in my life. I was very suicidal, and honestly, all I could think about then is dying. And it was a scary time because I hadn't really felt like that before. Like, obviously, I had been sad before, just very lost, and I didn't know what to do, and I wanted that feeling to go away. And I felt like I had done so much to try and make it go away. And I remember one night I was just crying in my bed and I just didn't know what to do. And I got on my hands and knees and I prayed. I prayed so hard and I asked God to help this pain go away, like anything. And it was kind of silly, but I was like, if you help me with this, I will turn to your church. And obviously it didn't completely go away immediately. Like that's the fun thing with prayers is they don't always get answered immediately.
It's a surprise.
Yeah.
You know?
And but I feel like I did feel a little better the next day. And then after then it just kept getting a little bit better. It did take a long time though. I had lots of events that happened, especially last year in February. I don't know if I'll really talk about that, but kind of a traumatic event
Right.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
And still was lost after that, but slowly and slowly after that, a couple months after, I'd say around April, I finally felt like I was finding myself again. And then in May, honestly, when I started dating Brian, I think honestly that helped me so much. And I knew he was a part of the church. And I think that made me realize like, this is what I need to do. I need to go into this church. Honestly, Brian is what is telling me to like start doing this. Obviously, he didn't tell me that, but his example definitely helped me so much in finding who I am right now and finding the right person I want to be. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
Shout out to Brian. But that's very important because I heard this quote one time that the 5 people in your life that you're the closest to kind of determine who you are, right? So that could be your mom and your dad, or that could be your 3 best friends or whatever. And I can see that. Like I can see the 5 closest people in my life who kind of speak through me a little bit, you know, like my best friend Chase, like we speak so similarly. Oh my gosh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Similarly.
Thank you. And I mean, I guess he can speak better English than I can, I guess, but whatever. And we laugh at the same things and stuff just because of how long we've known each other. But even in getting into like a deeper sense of that, like surrounding yourself with people in the church is, you would probably say, is very important because you found Brian, and your parents were no longer members of the church, so that made things a little bit difficult, too. But you put yourself in a field, you invited those missionaries to be a part of your life, to teach you some lessons or whatever, And it's amazing that by you opening up your mind and everything, that it changed who you are now. And I can already see how much better you feel and everything. And life must feel a little bit better, It doesn't need to,
Yes.
I mean, it could be amazing, it could be good, it can be great, but life must feel a little bit better.
Mm.
And I love that for you. So going back into your question, you prayed that night, and the pain started going away slowly. What thoughts or impressions or actions did you start to do to kind of bring God back into your life? Because you made that
Mm.
promise with him, if you take away this pain, I will, be a part of your church.
Mm.
What actions did you take to remain faithful to that promise? Did you start and open up to the scriptures then? I mean, did you, I don't know. I'll just kind of let you kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I think after that, after I slowly started getting better, I also started getting help and therapy, which helped a little bit. Um I started kind of reading the Bible a little bit.
Okay.
Um I got the gospel library
The
and
app.
yeah,
Okay.
and I just would start reading that on my break at work.
Oh,
And
awesome.
yeah, just when I had time to, even if it was just a little bit, just to kind of help me understand a little bit and kind of understand if that's what I actually believe and stuff. I didn't open the Book of Mormon. I thought I would start with the Bible first.
I think that's
And
awesome, because missionaries are handing out the Book of Mormon 1st, and I think most people can argue that the Book of Mormon is kind of superior to everything else. I mean, we probably should in the church start thinking of them all as equals, because it's doctrine, and of course we've needed to translate over some of the additions to it and everything, but um, would you recommend people starting, if they're kind of in a phase in their moment where they're considering joining the church or a church, just finding God? Well, I guess this question kind of specifically goes with our church, but would you recommend people starting with the Bible or the Book of Mormon first? Because you got two hands of that. You started the Bible first originally, but also you got to see the Book of Mormon first in a different point of your life. Or does it not matter, would you say?
um I would say personally, I think the Bible helped a lot because it gives you, I feel more context, and it can help you understand the Book of Mormon a little bit more and understand where it's coming from a little bit.
Mm.
So, but I feel either way you start, I think you should just start at some point.
Just open the book.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's a trilogy too, I mean, we have a couple prequels in there, the Old Testament and the New Testament, right? And I like that you said it gives some background context. I've actually never thought of it that way. I just
Yeah.
kind of thought of it as kind of like to think of our scriptures as like Star Wars movies, because the
Yeah.
Star Wars movies a trilogy, and I thought of the New Testament as like the Mandalorian, and then I thought of the Old Testament as like Rogue One, just all these separate things that somehow kind of come up together because they're quote unquote in the same galaxy, right? I have my weird analogies of things, analogies, as my friend Haley Church calls it. So that's awesome. I love that. So then you started reading the scriptures. When did you start attending church?
I think that was after I started talking to the missionaries.
Okay.
Because I was honestly very scared to go to church by myself.
I believe it.
And that's another thing that scared me a lot before, is just going to church. It scares me. I'm very socially anxious too. So
Okay, yeah.
going to a new place with new people sounded very scary to me.
I mean, that's very scary because a lot of in our church, we kind of a facade where we're just the happiest people on earth and everything. You walk into sacrament meeting and it's a small world with all these happy people and everything. It's I don't even know who you are, but somehow you know me, like it's kind of nerve
Mhm.
wracking and everything, but it's a happy place. And especially being introduced into that new environment, that probably was scary.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, we kind of make the assumption in our church, we're like, everyone's been a member their whole life, like
Mhm.
we believe in missionary work, we believe in converts, but in my opinion, and I've always seen people kind of make like the assumption that we're just, like, I mean, it's such a common stereotype in Utah,
Yeah.
and everyone's a member of the church, and then like we see a convert to the church and we're kind of like, whoa, like this is so cool, like we experience it like it's not happening around us, but it is, and you're a shining beam of example of that, and you've thrived, especially what I've heard so far. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. So you started attending church, and then how did you and Brian's kind of getting a little bit into detail? How did you and Brian's like relationship kind of change over that? Like, what would you say to people who kind of have it's kind of like a one-sided relationship where they believe in God and then they don't believe in God?
Mhm.
What would you say to those people out there with your experiences with Brian, if you have anything to add on that?
I think it definitely helped grow our relationship a lot, and it helped me understand a lot of Brian because obviously he's grown up in the church, and I really do think it brought us so much closer, honestly. And especially with being baptized, he actually was the one that baptized me,
Oh,
which
really?
was honestly such a beautiful thing.
That is extremely beautiful. Wow, I love that
Hmm.
so much.
Yeah. And I just feel like now we can like go to church together and
Yeah,
read scriptures together, and I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I feel like if you have contrasting beliefs, it can work in a relationship, but it is so much harder to get really close to that person. And I feel like now that I'm in the church, it's made it so much easier to get closer to him. So, yeah.
that's awesome. That's great. I love that he got to be a part of that ordinance with you, and that's very cool that you said that so confidently, like you've seen improvement,
Mhm.
and so that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, have you had any talk about like your parents with this? I mean, what I do know is your mom's not around really that much.
Yeah.
I don't know really right now how often you're seeing your dad and everything, but obviously from your childhood, he's probably not very happy with this decision and everything.
Mhm.
But uh, how has that kind of impacted your relationship with your parents? Because we talked about Brian, but um, as much as you can add on that.
Um, it was a very scary conversation with my dad. I knew that I didn't want to talk to him in person about it because me and my dad have a weird relationship. I'm very shy around him, and it's hard for me to talk to him. I don't know why, it just is.
Mm-hmm.
But I was down at school and I was like, I need to tell him so he can like come to my baptism and everything if he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that night I texted him and I was so terribly nervous about it. And it probably didn't go perfectly well. He was definitely a little angry about it. Um, but I think after we got over that little bump, he was like, I don't completely believe everything you believe, but just know, like, I'll support you no matter what. Especially if this is making you happy, I'll support you in that. And that meant so much to me that he was
Absolutely.
going to support me through that. And he showed up to my baptism. It was great. And I feel like after that, honestly, me and my dad's relationship has grown so much.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's actually been so amazing. We've been talking a lot more, and even though I'm like away in college, I feel closer to him. And we can still talk about God because he does believe in God, just not the way I do.
Okay.
Um, and I think it's truly grown our relationship. So, like, even if somebody you love isn't a part of the church, it can still grow your relationship so much.
Right. And then just as the simple scripture says and has been said in many different ways, love one another. A lot of times in the church, you need to be a member, you need to have a temple recommend and everything. I mean, the greatest commandment, my favorite commandment, love one another. so simple, and my hot take on life is I just want people to find Jesus. I want people to experience the blessings we get to feel in the church because that's what I believe in. And I fully believe that. And I think we are the only true church in this whole world. But the one true person I will always believe in is my Savior, Jesus Christ, and, find a church that has Jesus in it, because a lot of people in our church say we worship a different Jesus. Last I
Yeah.
checked, Jesus' name is just Jesus. There's no
Mhm.
plural, anything. He's just Jesus, and um, it's awesome that, you know, different churches have different beliefs, different um, ordinances, different, some have a priest, some have a bishop, some do it their own way, but it's amazing that we just get to believe in Jesus, and in this great country where we're allowed to do that.
Mhm.
So that's awesome. So this will kind of be our takeaway point, but my last question for you is, now as a member, how do you view that the turning point in your life has kind of changed your perspective of everything? Like now, so I'll kind of rephrase that a little bit better because I had these pre-written beforehand, but now being a member of the church, and just kind of touch on as much as you want here, like what have you seen changed around you that you never thought you would see before? Think of 5-year or 8-year-old Kaylee who thought of the idea of getting baptized and is now baptized, now a member of the church, that little curiosity that started as a child. How about this? What would you say to 8-year-old Kaylee, who
Mhm.
eventually found religion?
Um, I think it has definitely been such a beautiful process. And I think it has been words, sorry.
No, you're good.
I think it has truly helped me find myself and helped me find my inner peace. Even when I wasn't quite a member of the church, after like committing to reading the scriptures, it had made me such a happier person and so much more pleasant to be around because when I'm sad, I'm not fun to be around.
Yeah.
um, but it has truly helped me find myself and who I want to be to people and help strengthen all my relationships around me, help me gain the right friends. Because honestly, like before, like I didn't really have many friends, especially going into college, but I've found very godly people, and I think surrounding myself around those kind of people have made me so much happier and truly helped me find myself.
That's awesome. And then my follow-up question for you is, what would you say to someone that's currently in your shoes who's maybe in the process of trying to get back into the church, believes in God, but doesn't want to actively worship? Anything kind of on the subjects of that, what would you tell them based off of the experiences that you've gone through? What's the greatest advice you could give?
I would say take that commitment, like start reading scriptures. I think that would help so much. Even if it's not something you believe in, find something that you can commit to. Put effort into what you want to do. Because I think after I finally put effort into God, it has truly blessed me so much. So,
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much
Mhm.
for coming on to the Owenverse. I really admire you so much for being able to talk to a crowd of who knows how many and being able to be vulnerable and share that. And I think this will genuinely help a lot of people. And I'll just kind of add my little bit of this, of kind of what Kaylee is saying, just since we both believe in the same religion and everything. The church is true for me. It is. And it doesn't always feel that way at first, like what Kaylee touched on. It's a slow process, and I've had to trust the process throughout the years, and it always works out. But it costs by being patient, because if you rush the whole process, it's not going to go very well. So, but yeah, with that being said, thank you for tuning into the Owenverse. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and share this with somebody who needs to hear this message and try and get the word out. This podcast is a legit thing and it is still up in the air. And if you're watching on Spotify, please follow and also share this with people, and Apple Podcasts, same thing with Spotify. But thank you for tuning in to this little corner of my universe, and this is the Owenverse.